Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, despite the lack of a post-holiday illness surge, doctors urge you to maintain healthy habits throughout the year. And police in New Mexico are investigating a series of shootings targeting local Democratic officials. A look at the candidate officials say was behind it all.
Plus a brief break now, but showers and a few storms possible as we head later this week. The breakdown on the way as Mountain News at 5:30 starts now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. While hospitals have not seen a post-holiday surge in COVID and flu numbers, health experts say it is still important to maintain healthy habits as we begin a new year. Kelsey Soto looks at the data and hears from those in the public health sector about learning to live with and navigate these viruses.
Many health professionals were worried about a surge of COVID-19 and flu cases after holiday gatherings. And while coronavirus cases are on the rise in Lexington and Fayette County, the area remains at a manageable level. Officials say it's still important to stay vigilant.
COVID exhaustion is real. You know, we're tired of getting sick. Some of us have had COVID multiple times. We're exhausted from that. We're tired of that. We're tired of every time we hear our kiddos cough, wondering, oh no, do they have a fever? Is it a dry cough? Is it a wet cough?
With many people testing for COVID-19 at home now, health departments fear this may not tell the whole story, but they do believe it's still important to track the data.
We're right in the kickoff of flu season, and flu season was hitting us hard this year. The previous week, we did finally see flu cases come back down. We had 37 cases compared to hundreds, which we had been seeing.
Dr. Stephen Stack, the commissioner of Kentucky's Department of Public Health, says he's proud of how those in the Commonwealth have come together the last 3 years to not only take care of their own health, but also looking out for the betterment of the community.
Thank you to all the people across Kentucky for getting through a really hard time and for spreading a little love and concern for each other and taking these steps to try to keep yourself and other ones safe.
In Lexington, Kelsey Soto, WKYT.
Preliminary data released from Johns Hopkins University reveals COVID-19 was likely or will likely be the third leading cause of death in the United States behind heart disease and cancer. The preliminary data shows more than 267,000 people died of COVID-19 last year. The data is still in the works of being completed as many states are still reviewing death certificates and refining their reporting. U.S. troops discharged for refusing to take the COVID-19 vaccine are unlikely to get back pay. That applies to about 8,000 former members of the military. A group of Republican senators say they should be reinstated with back pay. That's in response to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin rescinding the military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate.
Right now, we are not pursuing, as a matter of policy, back pay for those who refused the vaccine. At the time that those orders were refused, it was a lawful order, and so I'll just leave it at that.
The Pentagon and White House had wanted to keep the mandate, but they agreed to end it during negotiations over the National Defense Authorization Act.
Showers are gone, but clouds sticking around at least for some as we head into tonight. Others, well, we've seen a little bit of sunshine as we head towards sunset. Here's a look outside from I-64 at Moorhead right now. Upper 50s to right around 60. As a nice sunset is there on camera, at least part of it you see there on camera. And the sun, you can kind of tell shining there in downtown Somerset. 63 degrees, not a bad day for somebody to say, head out on a bicycle. Ooh, doing a flip there. How about that? How about a little trickeration going on out there this afternoon? How about that? I couldn't do that. Upper 50s to near 60 out there right now. It's, like I said, beautiful night to do it. There's 63 in Somerset, 63 in Monticello as well. It's a clean sweep out there now. Last of the clouds continuing to push on out of the region as we head through the rest of tonight. For tonight, well, we got clouds kind of around, but we should stay dry into the low 40s out there at the moment. We'll continue to watch a few more showers head into the forecast, and those details are in a few minutes. Steve?
Hope somebody knows that guy doing those tricks and tells him he was just on TV. Well, elected officials in New Mexico are expressing relief after police in Albuquerque say they've caught the man behind a series of shootings at the homes of Democratic lawmakers and officials. Authorities say the man responsible is a former Republican candidate who lost his bid for a state House seat in the November elections. CBS's Skylar Henry has the latest.
Victims are speaking out after police in Albuquerque, New Mexico, say they've caught the, quote, mastermind behind a series of shootings targeting the homes of local Democratic officials that began in December.
It was a relief. I know that this was a real focus of APD and other agencies, and I'm just very grateful for the work they did.
A SWAT team took 39-year-old Solomon Pena into custody Monday. He ran as a Republican for a New Mexico state House seat in November. Police say after he lost the election, he hired 4 people to commit the shootings at the homes of Democratic officials. A police report ties the shootings to Pena's vehicle.
The evidence that we have is not only firearm, but it's also from cell phones and electronic records, surveillance video, and multiple witnesses inside and outside of this conspiracy.
Investigators say Pena complained that he felt the election was rigged, posting back in November that he stands with Trump and he never conceded his race. Pena has a criminal history. Lawmakers in New Mexico tried to bar him from running for the state house seat after he served prison time for burglary and larceny convictions. At the time, Pena released a statement calling himself a, quote, reformed felon who earned a degree and turned his life around. The Democratic mayor of Albuquerque called the shootings dangerous to democracy.
We know we don't always agree with our elected officials, but that should never, ever lead to violence.
No one was hit in any of the shootings. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Washington.
In one of the shootings, police say Pena went along and pulled the trigger himself. When his gun malfunctioned, investigators say another shooter with him opened fire. 2 reality television stars, once in talks to move to Kentucky, are set to report to 2 separate federal prisons. The Crisley Knows Best stars, Todd and Julie Crisley, were found guilty of evading taxes and conspiracy to defraud banks out of more than $30 million in fraudulent loans. Todd was sentenced to 12 years in prison, while Julie was sentenced to 7 years. The 2 have maintained their innocence, and their lawyers have said the couple plans to appeal the verdict in their case. The White House is defending itself for not being more forthcoming with public information about the classified documents found in President Biden's home and former office, while Republicans say even the investigation into those documents is not fair. CBS's Nicole D'Antonio has more from Capitol Hill.
Will you commit to speak to the special counsel?
President Biden ignored shouted questions from the White House press corps Tuesday about the special counsel investigation into his handling of classified material. The White House says it is limited in what it can say publicly now that there's an ongoing investigation.
We are trying to be very prudent here, and we're trying to be very consistent and say this is an ongoing legal process, and this is why I say we're just not going to comment from here.
The White House has turned over roughly 20 documents found at Mr. Biden's home and former office.
At no time did he get raided by the FBI. At no time did they come forward and say who was there could actually see these documents that are sitting in the garage behind a Corvette.
Republicans say the Justice Department is handling the investigation into President Biden differently than the investigation into former President Trump. The White House says it immediately turned over the documents to the National Archives and notified the DOJ, whereas the FBI executed a search warrant to recover more than 100 documents from former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home after he denied repeated requests to turn them over. In both cases, the DOJ has assigned a special counsel to see if there's criminal wrongdoing.
But are the same amount of agents investigating this that are investigating President Trump? Is the same push behind it? It just does not seem fair.
House Republicans have already launched a select committee to investigate what they call the weaponization of the federal government, claiming the DOJ unfairly targets conservatives. Nicole D'Antonio, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The White House says it is reviewing oversight letters from House Republicans and will respond in due time, but at the same time cause the investigation's political spin. China's population shrank in 2022 for the first time in more than 60 years. Last year, the population declined to 1.4 billion, which is down about 850,000 from 2021. China's National Bureau of Statistics announced those numbers today during a briefing on annual data. Analysts said the decline was the first since 1961 during the Great Famine triggered by former leader Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward. Climate activist Greta Thunberg has been arrested by German police. Thunberg was one of several protesters taken away from the edge of an open coal pit mine today. The German media says the protesters were demonstrating against the ongoing destruction of a village to make way for the mine's expansion. The German government reached a deal with energy company RWE last year, allowing it to destroy the village in return for ending coal use by 2030 rather than 2038. More than 3 million people were displaced in the United States last year, all due to natural disasters. The U.S. Census Bureau says 3.3 million people were impacted by natural disasters in 2022. Of course, we had our fair share in eastern Kentucky. 1 million of those affected are in Florida, which of course was hit by Hurricane Ian in September. Louisiana also saw a large portion of its population displaced, mainly by multiple tornadoes that hit that state last year. The United Nations Refugee Agency has identified natural disaster displacement as one of climate change's most devastating impacts. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, the housing market has been a roller coaster this past year, especially for first-time home buyers trying to get on the ride. Expert advice on steps you need to take to get into your first home.
Well, a few changes on the way for the second half of this week. The latest breakdown coming up after this.